Now to Washington and new questions about whether the government is covering up evidence of UFOs.
I had an experience.
A congressional hearing straight out of a science fiction movie.
All to hide the fact that we are not alone in the cosmos.
Lawmakers calling for more transparency around UAPs, or unidentified anomalous phenomenon. That's the term the government now uses instead of UFO.
What do you believe UAPs could be or are?
Strong evidence that they are non-human, higher intelligence.
An intelligence officer last year claimed the Pentagon has been hiding knowledge of alien activity for decades.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to.
Luis Elizondo, who headed a Pentagon program investigating UAPs, now doubling down on his claims.
Has the government conducted secret UAP crash retrieval programs, yes or no?
Yes.
Were they designed to identify and reverse engineer alien craft, yes or no?
Yes.
Elizondo saying the alleged extraterrestrial presence poses a national security threat.
Let me be clear. UAP are real. Advanced technologies not made by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe.
And saying he believes many classified materials should be shared with Congress and the public.
If this was an adversarial technology, this would be an intelligence failure eclipsing that of 9/11 by an order of magnitude. I believe that we as Americans can handle the truth. And I also believe the world deserves the truth.
The hearing lacked any direct evidence, with witnesses who have said they'll only speak about certain subjects behind closed doors. So, the result of yesterday's hearing? Well, one congresswoman says it could open the door to more hearings. President-elect Trump has said he might be willing to release more video of UAPs.
Was anything described as that we have possession of bodies?
Yes. Yes.
We have is it multiple types of creatures, or
sir, I couldn't answer that. I can tell you anecdotally that it was discussed quite a bit when I was at the Pentagon. The problem is the supposed collection of these biological samples occurred before my time, in fact, before I was even born.
And was this part of the Lockheed Martin discussion, or was this the biologics is a completely separate?
Separate yet related.
Okay. Has anyone made contact?
Sir, I'm sorry, could you specify?
Has there been any, to your knowledge, any communication with a non-human life form?
So the term communication is a bit of a trick word because there's verbal communication like we're having now. The problem is you also have nonverbal communication. And so I would say definitively yes.
This is the Nations Conspire channel. Welcome to today's show. Congress once again met last week talking about unidentified anomalous phenomenon, talking about UFOs, and talking, even as you heard there, about the recovering of actual bodies of aliens that the government has kept secret, supposedly, for all of these years. And I think a lot of people out there, if you watch the way things are going, it's looking more and more likely that Project Bluebeam is on the horizon during Trump's campaign as president, because Donald Trump is the one who's baiting and teasing the conservative audience into believing that the deep state has been hiding all of these things from the civilians and that he's going to reveal all of these things to everyone. But what most Christians don't understand is that aliens are not real. The term alien and what they tell us and have programmed us to believe that aliens exist in outer space. They travel from Mars to Venus, up Uranus. You know, all of the propaganda we've seen from Star Trek to Star Wars is fictional, because what they're actually doing is covering for demons. Aleister Crowley wrote in his book, today they call them angels and demons, tomorrow they will call them something else. And in fact, they are taking these demons and calling them aliens because they are going to train you and deceive you into accepting aliens over in our physical realm. They're preparing to bring over what's on the other side. A lot of these videos I've done about stargates and portals are preparation for this. And there's a big difference here in understanding an alien deception versus actual spiritual warfare. Because like most of the things they've convinced everybody of, they continue to minimalize God by telling you that there's a universe out there and there's planets out there and you could travel out there. It makes God look small. It makes people believe in science over the actual facts of the Bible. And an alien deception would work perfectly with Donald Trump. They've been preparing us for this for quite some time. A lot of the rapture programming that's gone around where people are date setting, predicting days of raptures. And if you don't know about Project Bluebeam would be a simulation in the sky created by the government, which would make it look like an actual alien deception that's going on. But it could also be mixed in with biblical themes of seeing Fatimas, so to speak, in the sky, signs from God, wonders in the sky, which the Bible warns about, fake deceptions in the sky, and the Antichrist being able to perform miracles. But don't forget, again, about the Vatican publishing new norms to discern alleged supernatural phenomena, because that's going to be part of this, that the Vatican is going to be the one who officially says if there's a sign in the sky that it is of God or not. And we could all look at it and say, well, who's actually going to fall for this stuff? But again, look how easy it is for Christians to be deceived into Donald Trump, into Elon Musk. I mean, Elon Musk is literally microchipping human beings. He is Neuralinking human beings. We are in the middle of the human trials, and all the Christians out there are now aligned with him. And of course, baits them by saying that he actually believes in God all of a sudden when his entire life he has openly denounced God. This is a deception that's going on, but it shows us that Christians can be very easily deceived into this. Now, I want to talk about something else that occurred during this meeting. If you didn't hear it, it is very, very interesting to pay attention to this narrative, and I'll get into it in a second. But in regards to Donald Trump being able to deceive Christians, we already see him deceiving them. We already see him tickling their ears, using these terms over and over again, like divine intervention, that God spared his life so he could save yours. All of this thing, all these lines that should be looked at as blasphemous, right? He literally is saying that God spared him so he could save America, when all Christians should know that we're already saved through the sacrifice that Jesus Christ made on the cross. We don't need saving here on earth other than the saving that Christ gave to us. But again, all of the martyring of Trump, all of the things that the government has done to meddle in your life and annoy you and make you pull your hair out, like telling you that they're going to send trannies to your public school and you're going to be able to do nothing about it. It's all been done by design to get you to support this MAGA movement. No time in history have we ever seen people so devoted to political parties like we see now. And don't forget this interview that Donald Trump did with Joe Rogan, because they specifically were trying to tie in conspiracies like what really happened to JFK with UFOs, because they want you to think that the government's been hiding all this UFO information and that Donald Trump is going to reveal these things to everyone. Here's the clip from Joe Rogan if you didn't see it.
A lot of interest in the people coming from space, you know.
Yes. How much did they tell you about that?
A lot. But I interviewed a few people. I interviewed jet pilots that say they saw something. But I interviewed jet pilots that were solid people. And they said, we saw things, sir, that were very strange. Like a round ball, but it wasn't a comet or a meteor. It was something. And it was going 4 times faster than an F-22, which is a very fast plane. And it was round. They said, sir, there's something there. You know,
there's something there.
They've said it, yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to quite a few of
them.
They're
not conspiracy guys.
So obviously, if somebody was going to deceive the masses, Democrats will automatically believe whatever they're told, whatever they're shown on television. The conservatives, if Donald Trump puts his stamp of approval on it and tells us that UFOs are real, that aliens fly around on planets, Christians will believe what he says. And they'll say, oh, they've been hiding it. Now I'm going to reveal it to everyone. They will not know that these are actually demonic entities. And the other thing to note that I'm going to play for you now is very important, because during all of this debate in Congress about the existence of UFOs, we had discussion about actual UFO alien aircraft underwater. They're literally talking about operating from underwater bases. And one of the clips here that I'm going to play for you, they even talk about how they were tailing UFO spacecraft was now undersea, tailing submarines back in the 80s and 90s. This is kind of a new narrative that's out there. Why am I bringing attention to this? I'm bringing attention to this because you may remember in the video that I did on Dark MAGA, the Dark MAGA Assemble Elon Musk tweet where he tweeted out this video, which means he uploaded this video. He didn't repost it, he uploaded it, where it was showing over and over in this video Donald Trump referencing Atlantis, right? Descendants of the became destructive. Atlantis stone. Verses and quotes with a wolf in sheep's clothing behind it, literally showing you a wolf talking about Atlantis. And it's believed that the fallen ones and the Nephilim are actually what is believed as these Greek gods of Atlantis. And that when God created the flood, as in Genesis, it was to rid the earth of the Nephilim. In Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward when the sons of God went into the daughters of humans who bore children to them. These were the heroes that were of old, warriors of renown. And it's not coincidental that now all of a sudden you'll hear Lauren Boebert, which I'll get into in a separate video. I've covered Lauren Boebert before, bringing attention to this. And she's even bringing attention to genetics, the actual experimentation of mixing humans' DNA with the DNA of what we would call here in Congress, they're speaking as if it was aliens and human beings, experiments being done mixing their genetic code. But really what this means is that she's openly bringing up in Congress the government doing experiments of mixing the genetic codes of human beings and trying to merge human beings with these demonic entities, which a lot of us believe is exactly what was occurring during the outbreak when they were trying to get a certain goop or goo, a black goo, inside of human beings' bodies. Listen to some of the stuff that was discussed and keep in mind the theories about Atlantis and Donald Trump's, that video, which again, it wasn't produced by Donald Trump, but it was retweeted out by Elon Musk. And there's lots of references to Atlantis in it. So keep that in mind as you listen to this.
There are rumors that have come up to the Hill of a secretive project within the Department of Defense involving the manipulation of human genetics with what is described as non-human genetic material, potentially for the enhancement of human capabilities, hybrids. Are any of you familiar with that? Yes or no?
No, ma'am.
I am not, ma'am.
I'm not.
No, ma'am.
Okay, I would like to know, with Immaculate Constellation, how does this relate to UAP activities, Mr. Schellenberg, in oceanic environments? Are there any instances where the Navy or other maritime forces have encountered UAPs that could not be explained by known technology or natural phenomena?
Yeah, the Immaculate Constellation covers both terrestrial and oceanic, and there's actually a number of cases described in the report that occur in the ocean.
And do you believe that there is a concerted effort by the Pentagon to keep Congress out of the loop regarding these UAP activities, specifically in our waters?
Yes.
I think it's about 5% of our ocean that's actually been studied in detail by man, and we've studied more of space than we had of our own oceans. And so are there any accounts of UAPs emerging from or submerging into our water which could indicate a base or presence beneath the ocean's surface?
I don't know about a base, but as I mentioned, I had a different source entirely describe this pretty extraordinary footage that exists of orbs, of an orb coming out of the ocean and being met by another orb.
Some would say that there's multiple hotspots where we see frequent activity. So in your investigations, have you come across any data or visual evidence like sonar readings or underwater footage of these UAPs?
I have not beyond what's in the report.
You've written about UAPs not only in the air but in underwater. Are there any specifics on what you've learned about the UAP activity in our oceans? Particularly, have you spoken with sources who have provided any evidence or eyewitness accounts of these UAPs interacting with our naval forces or being detected by our underwater surveillance systems?
Nothing beyond what's in the report and then the specific case that I mentioned with the orb.
All right. Have you specifically had any experience with submersible objects?
Sir, I've no personal experience, but I've had witnesses on submarines come to me and say they've seen on sonar data.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah,
how would you characterize those, and how do they move?
The one instance that was revealed to me was in the 80s on a nuclear-powered submarine, a ballistic missile submarine, that the object exhibited the characteristics of a Russian torpedo in terms of its speed of movement and closing rate with the submarine, and then it slowed and followed the submarine slowly in its wake for a period of minutes, and then rapidly exited the scene. And nothing that we know of, and technology-wise, could replicate that.
And the speed of these objects was faster than anything that we have or anybody else has that would be manned. Is that correct?
It was on the order
Underwater.
of a torpedo. So
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. But as it exited,
Well, I don't exactly know how fast a torpedo is, but I expect it does better than my old outboard Scott Atwater, so I'll take that as a yes.
So now, in addition to paying attention to a potential Project Bluebeam deception, we need to pay attention to this other notion of them in Congress bringing attention to actually uncovering hidden civilizations in the middle of the ocean. Now, this isn't a new theory. Obviously, a lot of people have believed for quite some time. If you're new to all this stuff, a lot of people have believed that they were trying to recreate Atlantis or bring Atlantis forward back on Earth. There's lots of theories about the ocean, but they've never discussed this so openly in Congress. They've brought up UFOs in Congress. They've gaslighted people about, oh, they've seen aircraft in the sky, and then the government goes and hides it. But now talking about not only the potential of hidden civilizations in the middle of the ocean, seeing spacecraft now flying underwater, tailing submarines, also the mentioning of the government themselves experimenting with making a hybrid race, so to speak, the genetic codes being mixed. So we've gone from a point where 20 years ago, any mention of an alien, most people would have rolled their eyes at. But as the conditioning went on and on and on, people actually now believe aliens exist. They believe in all these planets, that there's space travel going on. They no longer believe in the firmament above, keeping everybody out of space. They actually think we could go up there, which we can't, which has been proven because they've never gone back to the moon, because they never went to the moon in the first place. But they've created this whole illusion of what space is, and that's all through constant programming of movies about space. You see it long enough, you see the lie long enough, your eyes perceive this, and you're going to these movies, even if you're already going in thinking it's fiction, in your mind you believe, well, this might be fiction, the story about the alien might be fiction, but we could go out there, we could travel out there. Elon Musk is sending rockets out there. Jeff Bezos is sending, phallus-looking rockets out into space, so we could go out into space. So then suddenly this whole perception that they want in your mind, that all this stuff is happening up in the sky, it's happening up all the way up there in outer space, and that we could go to Mars and we could occupy Mars. These are all deceptions that they've wanted planted in your head. This takes away the biblical aspect of everything that's going on in the world. That's what people don't understand. This is biblical. This is spiritual warfare. These are demonic entities. The Bible talks a lot about sorcery, witchcraft. These are things that you never hear in the 501c3 churches, by design, of course, because these are churches that essentially are, and they might start off as churches and they might be good churches, right? But they're churches who are going to be tax exempt. So they pretty much follow a cookie cutter structure of what the church is supposed to look like and what the church is supposed to sound like. And we see how a lot of these churches side with government psyops, just like most of these churches, if not all of them, side with Donald Trump and then guilt you if you don't go and vote and you don't support Donald Trump and you don't believe the narrative that the government themselves is giving you about divine intervention saving Donald Trump's life, that Donald Trump is aligned with God. I mean, the brainwashing and the propaganda is at levels we've never actually seen before, but they don't bring attention to this from that aspect. You'll hear churches even talk about aliens, but they don't say, hey, you know that aliens, okay, we go back to Aleister Crowley when he summoned Lam, when he summoned this demon, which is the exact identical depiction of a gray that we see throughout movies that we're told, hey, aliens don't exist, or maybe they do, but here's what it looks like conveniently, and it's identical to what Aleister Crowley drew in his book, where he specifically said, today we call them angels and demons, tomorrow we're going to call them something else, right? Because if Christians actually realize this, and if atheists actually realize this, well, they would no longer believe in the man-made science that they believe in. And people would realize that this is a spiritual war, and you need to choose a side between God and the devil. But they don't. They don't. And they're not going to if they continue to listen to their these fake government-created heroes on earth like Donald Trump, who are just basically baiting them, barely even having to do anything to bait them. All they need to do is just say, I got baptized, or I believe in God now. Oh, I believe in heaven. I mean, every quote that Donald Trump has given about heaven has been laughable. I mean, even the most, dumbed down Christian, somebody who maybe, never reads the Bible would know that Christianity 101, right? The belief is that you're saved through the blood of Christ. You're saved through Christ dying on the cross. And what does that mean? Well, that's the way to heaven. It's through Jesus Christ. You don't go to heaven if you're a good person and you don't believe in Jesus Christ, okay? You don't. It's only through Christ. The concept of heaven is through the Bible. It's biblical. But we hear all these people talk about, well, if you hold the door open for grandma, you might make it into heaven. And then these Christians just go along with it. They don't even hear they're like, well, Trump's not a deep Christian, so he doesn't know exactly how it works. Anybody out there knows that that's the belief of Christianity, that you're saved through Christ, period. Salvation through Christ. Heaven through Christ. Not through holding doors open or just, saying that you donated money to charity because you're a philanthropist Freemason. So back to the story, right? To recap here. We're getting closer and closer to potentially Project Bluebeam, which Trump would work perfectly with because, again, like I talked about in a recent video, okay? You asked me 25 years ago, I would have said nobody's going to fall for Project Bluebeam. I don't know how, in the 80s, I would have said, I don't know how anyone's actually going to fall for this because the propaganda people were getting fed, it wasn't constant enough for them to fall for it, right? There wasn't somebody that they could look at and trust who they think is going to tell them the truth and not deceive them. Well, now we see that these Christians will literally come at you and go down your throat, no matter if you're a fellow Christian or not. If you're not a fellow Republican, they get more angry at that than the fact if you're a Christian or not. You could say, hey, I believe in Jesus Christ, but you don't vote for Trump? I can't talk to you. I can't be around you, right? So if Trump comes out and tells us that there's a sign in this, UFOs are real, aliens are real, the government's hidden this, and doesn't tell you that they're demons or demonic entities, right? Then Christians will believe it, and they'll be like, okay, there's life on other planets, the government and the deep state's been hiding it from us. We won't correlate this with spiritual war. We'll look at this as if there's an existence of another being around us. In fact, eventually they'll be convinced to hang out with these things and let these demons lurk in our realm. I mean, it's going to be unbelievable. It truly is, right? Then the Vatican themselves went out of their way this year, which is really the most important thing to know, is that when the Vatican made this announcement that they were going to, they had new norms, they had new regulation to discern alleged supernatural phenomena, that the Vatican was going to be the authority on Project Bluebeam. And that's all you need to hear, right? And we as people who are awake, we can look at it and say, well, who trusts the Vatican? I mean, there's people out there that actually trust, there are people who trust the Vatican, there's people who trust Donald Trump. And they don't know how, and the scariest part about the trusting of the Vatican and the trusting of Trump is that these people claim to be awake. They claim to be red pill. They claim to understand conspiracy and everything going on. Yet they think that your vote actually counts and you could pick who becomes the president. They actually support Israel. And on top of that, they actually don't even realize the Vatican's role, which is the top of the pyramid here, side by side with Israel, in everything that's going on, right? So after all of that stuff, right, and Trump baiting people on Joe Rogan about how he's going to unleash it, this stuff about, again, operating underwater bases, these are the narratives that are out there after this congressional hearing. Operating underwater bases, unidentified flying objects flying underwater, and of course, talking about bases underwater where our government is taking human DNA and manipulating it with what we're told is aliens' genetics to make a hybrid race. Can you believe we're actually hearing this in Congress? I mean, I guess we can with everything that's going on because we've gotten to a point where, a lot of it's not surprising. I'm not saying that it's a crazy notion at all. I'm saying I can't believe they're actually even addressing this in Congress. So now we need to pay attention to some of this stuff with Atlantis because of Donald Trump and these references to Atlantis. What do they have planned? Only time will tell. But they're not going to waste this opportunity that they have now with Donald Trump because they have a figure in place that Christians trust, that Christians will listen to no matter what he says. And that's what they've needed. And that's why they've martyred him so much over the last 8 years. And on top of all that, gone the other way to drive conservatives and Christians so crazy with all these crazy ideologies like the DEI and them telling us that our military is training in pronouns. This has all been done deliberately to get you to support Trump more because they've made it so that you feel like you need somebody to stop the insanity. But really what they're doing is they're putting someone in place to completely deceive you, and the time is near. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.